This is your Thursday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Hope everybody's having a great day out there. Thank you for listening. We got a lot to talk about today, as we often do. I'm going to start with some wild stuff here in a minute. Thought some comments from owner Craig Leopold on Wednesday were interesting, and thought their exhibition game was interesting as well. Some baseball thoughts on the wild card, on Twins, on multiple other things, including the roster for the Twins. And Phil Miller did a good who's staying, who's going chart. I want to get to that as well. Velle E. Neal III will join me to talk some Twins, too. We're revisiting some of the predictions we made at the start of the season. It's never, predictions are what they are. And for the Twins this season, obviously most of us thought they were going to be much better than they ended up being. But it's still kind of fun to go back and look at some of the individual performances that we predicted to see who did better. Spoiler alert, Lavelle did a little bit better than I did in some of his guesses, but it was still kind of a fun look back in that regard. And I got a couple questions from you guys, too. I'm going to pick the ones that focused on music, not sports, because I thought those were the most fun. So we'll get to those in a little bit as well. But first, what did I miss? Like I said, I'm interested in the Wild right now. I thought the Craig Leopold interview was probably the most interesting thing that I read in the Star Tribune. Sarah McClellan wrote it up. He was available to the media on Wednesday during the Wild's preseason game. None of it was necessarily earth-shattering, but it was just kind of a nice kind of dose of truth serum in a few regards. The biggest thing was he readdressed the Ryan Suter, Zach Parise buyouts and basically said he would have done it all over again. Here's the quote. "It totally changed our franchise. We went from not selling any tickets and having a future that looked bleak to overnight being a sellout team for the next 5-6 years. Now, on the ice, did we get to the level that we want? No, we didn't. But as I've told all of our employees and anybody that will listen, would I do it over again? In an absolute second. They were huge for our franchise. They lifted us up. I would absolutely do it again, swinging for the fences, no problem." He also described how he kind of went back and forth quite a bit with Bill Guerin on whether they should buy him out this past offseason. Guerin convinced him, and he's on board with that as well. So he's convinced the salary cap's going to go up next season. How much it goes up probably will determine how much the Wild is able to do. Beyond just the Kirill Kaprizov contract, the Joel Eriksson Ek contract, they're going to have to pay Jordan Greenway, Kevin Fiala going forward. So we'll see who is able to stay as those contracts weigh heavily on their cap. But if you're talking about risk reward, if you're talking about where they were and where they're going, I suppose you can make the case that was a signing that had to be done at the time, and that even if there's some pain right now, it was worth it. And I loved one more thing from Leopold's comments. He was talking about the Kaprizov signing. Basically, this was probably the most honest assessment of where things were at with the negotiations. And he said, "I knew we were going to sign him. There was just no doubt. They were stringing it out as long as they could in hopes that Billy," that's Bill Guerin, "would add something to it, and he never did. And he went down, and they kind of had a kumbaya moment, and they all hugged it out and flew back on a private jet." That's basically sounds kind of like exactly what happened, right? Like, the Wild had an offer out there. Kaprizov, in the end, didn't really have that much leverage. He wasn't going to go play in Russia, and he wants to play hockey. He wants to make money. He's a young star. Maybe he wanted this, maybe he wanted that, maybe he wanted more money, a slightly shorter term. But at the end of the day, if the Wild was coming up with what it thought was a fair offer, he kind of had to take that or not. So all of us were worried. I think it was, it lasted longer than we'd hoped it would. And, in the end of the day, though, was Kaprizov really going to sit out the year? Probably not. So I like the way Craig Leopold framed that and just kind of put it all out there for everybody to read and see and now listen to. So that piece of it was interesting to me. The game itself was interesting, too. A lot of young, Wild players played in that game. Looked like they were going to get routed. They were down 3-0, but Adam Beckman, overtime goal, assist, and a fight, what they call the Gordie Howe hat trick. They come back and win 4-3 against just preseason against St. Louis, but maybe making an impression. A lot of these young guys battling for roster spots. Good Sarah McClellan story on Marco Rossi as well. So that's all part of why I'm interested in this team. I want to see who the young guys are. There's going to be opportunities because, in part, of those buyouts for Parise and Suter. We'll see if they were able to fill in adequately for those departures.
Since I was a kid, my grandpa, Jim Warner, taught us to treat our customers like family. And to thank you for 67 years, Warner Stellian is offering unbeatable appliance savings. Go to warnerstellian.com to get your $50 coupon you won't find anywhere else.
Happy to be joined today by Velle E. Neal III, columnist for the Star Tribune, longtime Twins beat writer before that. Velle, on today's show, I want to review some of our predictions. We did a segment right before the Twins season started, and I think you did better than I did in a lot of these Twins categories. But before we get to that, there was a little bit of Twins news that we maybe didn't expect on Wednesday. They fired their hitting coach.
Yeah, it looks like Edgar Varela is going to be reassigned somewhere else in the organization. And the extra coach they called up, I think when Mike Bell passed away and Bill Evers took over as bench coach. I think his name is Scott Morgan or something like that. He's being reassigned as well. So, but the key thing here is they're looking for another guy to connect with some of these guys to try to get the most out of their at bats. Varela's been in the organization for several years. He's well liked. Because of the pandemic, you're not in the clubhouse, so you're not, picking up on clues as to what would precipitate a move like this, But I just knew that how much they loved James Rowson before he left to go to Florida and become their offensive coordinator. And it seemed like the message and his connection with the players was pretty strong. He was really sharp, funny, a good psychologist. Was able to connect with different guys. Don't know if Varela didn't seem to have that same personality as Rowson. I don't know if that affected how he approached his job or not. But I know he's liked, and they'll probably find something that he can thrive in elsewhere in the organization. But it'll be interesting to see if they will hire someone from within or look outside the organization to find their next hitting coach.
How underrated is the Rowson departure after 2019 in terms of kind of what happened with this organization? Because, 2020, they still won, but a lot of it was pitching in 2020 and not necessarily the offense. Do we kind of overlook that as a factor in kind of where this thing started to kind of go off the rails a little bit?
No, I tend to believe that ultimately it's the player that makes the coach look good. I remember when the Royals were hitting well and they had Jermaine Dye and Mike Sweeney and Johnny Damon, and all of a sudden their hitting coach, Jeff Pentland, was considered like this great hitting mind, But then the Royals started trading those guys away, and the players that replaced them were worse, and then Pentland gets fired. So I don't know how I don't know how you wrap your brain around that concept that it's the hitting coach's fault totally. But I know that while Rowson was well liked and he was definitely missed, and Varela's a different type of guy. So I don't know if that played into it or if Varela just had a hard time trying to connect with some guys. Is the next hitting coach going to have to be able to become Miguel Sano's best friend or Max Kepler's best friend? I don't know. But like I said, I've seen them come and go. And a lot of times it ends up being the player that thrives and the coach, coach gets credit when things are going good and he gets blamed when things are going bad. It's really a thankless position. So we'll see who the next guy is for the Twins.
It's kind of like third base coach. You get the Yankees, Phil Nevins getting all sorts of grief from the other day. Phil Nevin was a Twin briefly, was he not?
Yes, he was. Briefly, he was. I can't remember what year it was, but he was with the Twins, and the fact that he's like coaching another major league team just baffles me because Nevin's kind of a hard-charging, wound-up guy, and I never saw him as being a good fit for leading other young men. But he's quite a character as a third base coach, so I'm not surprised that he's gotten a few people thrown out there.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what the Twins end up doing. We'll see if it has an impact on their offense. They probably could have hit 500 home runs this year, and it wouldn't have mattered with their pitching. But maybe they can get more out of those guys. Before we get to our over-unders and our predictions for the season 2, wanted to say the Polanco column he wrote, spot on. I mentioned the same exact thing to Royce on Monday's podcast. I kind of feel like not forever, but why not have him play shortstop? He can do it if he can, maybe the whole idea of this guy, you take a little bit off his plate and he hits better. I don't know if that's the case because I think maybe it was more the ankle injury than anything else in 2020 that was knocking him off his game. But just I think you give a little bit up on defense because he's not a great defensive player, and especially if you're playing more Parise at second base. But your hitting's better, and and it lets you go do other things with your money and your positions that especially in a year like 2022 where you don't quite know what direction you're headed.
Yeah, Mike, I just think that any capital they spend, whether it's cash, whether it's tradable assets in order to get better, I don't want to waste it on another middle infielder when you have in-house options that can be decent. I think Arias and Nick Gordon can, definitely Arias is an above average hitter. His OPS is a little lacking this year, but I think he can get that stroke back. And I think Nick Gordon finally having a year where he stayed healthy and got his feet under him. I think he could take off from there next year and be a super utility guy for the Twins. So I think he can get by with those two guys, hunting around second and third in the outfield while Polanco plays short. So therefore, save your money and your trade chips to get better pitching. You need at least 2, maybe 3, and you need a closer. So whatever it takes to figure out, that route. Use all your assets for starting pitching and not on another middle infielder.
3 starting pitchers and a closer, as Mike Zimmer would say. So other than that, it's been great. Yeah, they got a lot to work on with the pitching, do they not?
Yeah, they do. And Falvey claims he wants to compete next year. So if you're going to compete, step 1, step 2, needs to be addressed here, which is step 1, starting pitching. Step 2,
another starting pitcher.
Step 3, Byron Buxton. Let's, if you want to win next year, there are certain things you got to go about doing to make it happen. Now, if he says that we're going to have to take a step back in 2022, we're going to trade Josh Donaldson and give third base to Jose Miranda, fine. I think people will be on board in that, looking at some of the nearly ready talent that's around here. And it gives you a year to get these kids some experience on the mound, and then maybe figure out a way to add pitching as you go along. Then you'll have Kenta Maeda back for 2023. We're hoping, So that's what I think. He came out and said a week last Thursday that said he wants to compete. So that tells me if you go to compete, then you got to do X, Y, and Z, 1, 2, and 3, A, B, and C.
They have to say that now, by the way. They can always pivot their messaging in mid-July when they're trading everybody away. And by the way, I think a Donaldson trade, they can still be competitive even if they make a Donaldson trade because that frees up more money for pitching too. All right, let's run through some of our predictions. Like I said, I think you did better than I did, but we did 5 kind of counting stat predictions at the start of the year. I asked you, I went back and listened to the podcast we did. I think it was April 1st, April 2nd, April 1st. It might have been April Fool's Day. So take that for what it's worth. Asked you who you thought was going to lead the Twins in home runs. You took Nelson Cruz. I took Josh Donaldson. Neither of those were terribly bad guesses. You kind of, Cruz gets lost in a technicality, but he got 32 between the Twins and the Rays, but that still wouldn't have been quite enough. Jorge Polanco led the team and organization at 33. Sano had 30, Donaldson 26. So, your Cruz guess was a good one. I thought he was going to have a 20 to 30% decline. He maybe had a 10% decline this year, if that.
I don't know. He really dropped off once he got to the Rays, though. His OPS was like under 800, I believe, with them after being nearly 1,000 with the Twins. So I don't know if he's, moving in the middle of the season and he's just trying to, keep up with, the pace and the rhythm of changing clubs, or is this the sign of the decline that we've all been worried about?
That said, Polanco, great year, 33 home runs. I don't think it would have been a terrible guess to guess Polanco, but that would have been a reach to probably guess Polanco at the start of the year. Pitcher wins.
Look who else is on the roster. Look who else is on that roster. How would you put Polanco in front of
exactly
Sano, Cruz, or Donaldson? And
I agree
that Sano got the 30 homers because I didn't think he would get the 20. When he was riding a bench in the middle of the season.
I didn't think he'd get to the 10 if he didn't play. Pitcher wins. We both took Maeda. That was derailed by injury. That would have been a hard one to see. Although I said, when I went back and listened, I said,
You could see Jay Happ being double digits as well. And you said with Happ, is that wins or losses? You were onto that one. You said he looked bad in spring training. You were all over the Jay Happ experience this year, man. You nailed that one.
I forgot I said that. Oh, these predictions come back to bite you, man.
But you did, but that was good. You got him. I mean, he was not good. He was. I don't know how many games he lost, but he lost his share this year.
And unlike Matt Shoemaker, Happ blamed himself when he got to the
right.
Said, this is on me. I needed to have done better. You know, he couldn't explain how he could all of a sudden just blow up. Like he pitched 2 or 3 good innings, all of a sudden things would just unravel, and he had no reason why that happened to him when he was with the Twins. But he went to the Cardinals, and like him and John Lester are like thriving. I just can't believe what's going on with the back end of that rotation with the Cardinals.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's got a track record. I mean, it's it is what it is. It didn't work out here. His numbers here: 5-6 with a 6.77 ERA. That's not great, although not as bad as our guy, Matt Shoemaker, 3-8 with an 8.06. So Randy Dobnak, by the way, not much better, 1-7 with a 7.64. They had a bunch of guys that just blew up this year and not in a good way. Griffin Jack, 6.37. Saves, you took Colomé as the leader. I took Rogers. You won with a late surge. Our guy Colomé, I don't know if it would have happened if Rogers hadn't gotten hurt and if they hadn't traded Hansel Robles. Robles was actually second on the team in saves with 10. Rogers had 9, but Colomé gets 17. So you are the winner on that one too. Do you feel good about taking that win though?
No, I don't. Well, I just thought going into the season, just trying to read the tea leaves, that the Twins felt more comfortable with Rogers as a setup guy and an occasional closer than him being the number one closer. So I just thought it was set up for Colomé to be the last man standing in the 9th inning. So, but he was part of that grand slam brigade that the Twins dealt with early in the season, when it seemed like whenever a reliever came in, the bases were loaded, that team was going to hit a grand slam for sure. But he got right during the second half of the season. I wonder if that's because he knew he was going to be the guy every day. That's another. It could be another reason to argue for just identifying one man as a closer and sticking with him instead of Rocco telling 5 guys to be ready to pitch in any situation. I think players are used to being slotted in certain situations, and they get in the routine and you get the best out of the player that way.
Yeah, that was the piece of Suhan's comment of the day that I agreed with the most. That proven closer idea can be overblown sometimes, but defined roles, I think there's something to be said for that. I know you got to run to something here in a minute. Last thing, stolen bases. You were right again. You took Jorge Polanco. I took Byron Buxton. It was not a fleet-footed race. It was actually close though. Polanco had 11. Max Kepler had 10. Nick Gordon had 10. And if he had had more of a season, he probably would have had more. Byron Buxton had 9. That is how that finished. I took Buxton. So Lavelle, you
did I not take Buxton because I was worried about him being healthy?
I think you didn't take Buxton because you were tired of him telling you that he was going to steal bases, and then he never stole bases.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because
I was saying, Lavelle, I'm going to steal bases. And you're like, Byron, you didn't steal a base all year last year, or something like that, or whatever it was. You didn't have.
That's right, because he never hits singles, and he doesn't walk a lot. So how can you be in a position to steal bases? Yeah. Wow, actually a kind of an astute forecast on my part.
It was a student. Don't be surprised either. You got of the predictions, you did better than me in pretty much every category, which we shouldn't be surprised by. You had 20 years or so on the beat, maybe more than that. I was watching a little bit more from a distance. So good job there. Thanks for hopping on, and we'll see how your Bears fare. I the Vikings can't lose to the Lions, can they? You just watched the Bears beat them. The Lions aren't any good, right?
Lions are terrible. I mean, I think they just played the Packers, the Bears, and they're playing the Vikings right in a row. And I don't see how the Vikings not win this game on Sunday. This would be a travesty if they pull this off. You know, then you have to wonder about Zimmer's mental health and his status as head coach if he can't beat Dan Campbell and the Lions at home.
Bite those kneecaps, baby. All right, Lavelle. Appreciate it. We'll do this again soon, all right?
All right, take it easy.
Good stuff, as always, from Lavelle. I want to stick with the Twins for a little bit here, too. One thing Lavelle and I didn't talk about was Phil Miller's staying or leaving chart. I think that's in the paper today. It's definitely on StarTribune.com. It's kind of a look at the whole roster, kind of assessing everybody who played this season, and three things stood out to me. Actually, let's say four things stood out to me. One was his assessment of Josh Donaldson, which I think was a good kind of blunt way to put it. He said he does an outlook on everybody. He says, Josh Donaldson is the canary in the coal mine. If the Twins are not trying to contend, they'll try to move him and give Jose Miranda his job. If they're serious about reloading, he's at third base and near the top of the lineup. I think it's a good way to look at it. I disagree slightly. I feel like they can contend without Josh Donaldson, and trading him might be their path to, getting back something good and freeing up some money for pitching. So I don't necessarily think trading Josh Donaldson would necessarily signal that they don't think they contend in 2022, but Phil's probably right in that if they are trading him, they're probably having more of a realistic eye on 2023 and not 2022. Another interesting one I thought was Jorge Polanco. Though trading him at his peak may be tempting, expect Polanco to hit in the heart of next year's lineup. I'm going to lump him in with Mitch Garver, too, who could be a trade candidate according to Phil Miller. He says midseason surgery is never a good thing. Garver somehow returned. 875 OPS makes him one of the top hitting catchers in the American League. Still relatively cheap. He's going to make about $3 million in arbitration. He's an enticing trade chip. Don't be surprised if he's moved. Never really thought of Mitch Garver as a likely trade candidate, but that's an interesting one because teams could probably use a catcher. He's had, the 2019 season, he was great. 2020 was kind of a lost year for him. He came back this year. He's hit again. Twins have Ryan Jeffers. He looks like they're maybe their catcher of the future. Do they need those guys splitting time? Could Mitch Garver be a trade chip? I hadn't really thought about him as someone who could be, someone who could fetch some pitching in return. But if that's a position of depth for the Twins, and they would need a backup catcher at that point if they're sold on Jeffers being their starter, that is an interesting possibility, I think. Another interesting thing was looking at the rotation for the Twins. We kind of know all this, but when you lay out every single pitcher and you see basically that he's got, Joe Ryan and Bailey Ober, who basically pitched half a season, not even that for Joe Ryan, as their only real candidates for the starting rotation, locks for next season, maybe Michael Pineda if he returns. They got a lot of work to do. Like, we've talked about this on the show, but when you see all these names laid out next to each other, you realize just how big of a deficit they have with pitching right now. It's just kind of embarrassing, but it kind of underscores where they are going into 2022. One more thing I thought was interesting was the status of Alex Kirilloff. Twins still very high on him. Could be at the expense of Max Kepler, who could be a trade candidate as well, although selling low the Twins would be. .211 batting average for Max Kepler this past season. It's OPS of 719. He's a above average defensive player, but maybe he could use a career reset as well. Just hasn't really taken off beyond that career season a couple of years ago. Let's talk Dodgers, Cardinals, and eventually Dodgers, Giants here for a minute too. I love the one-game playoff for the wild card for a couple of different reasons. One, I love the drama of one game. I know people might not think it's fair to play 162 games and then have to play one game to see if you can keep going in the playoffs. But you know what? Win the division then. Win the division. I don't care if your division is really hard. I don't care if your division is really easy. Those are the breaks. Like the two wild cards, if you got 5 playoff teams, this is the absolute best format for it because you get the 2 wild cards that have to play right away. The 3 division winners get to sit there and wait and play in the division series after that. So the drama is the first thing. The other thing, obviously, is it's a huge competitive advantage for the division winners, not just because they avoid that extra round and that elimination game where they could be done early, but the other team has to burn their best pitcher in the playoffs to get there. So I love that format. I love Rob Manfred for all of his numerous faults, many of which have been laid out on this podcast multiple times. He and baseball got that one right. My only worry is that they're probably going to add more teams in the offseason. Who knows what the playoff format will look like when they're all done with it. And then will the regular season even matter all that much? Or will it just be kind of like the NBA and NHL where you get in and then you have everybody has the same chance? So we'll see what they end up with the format right now. Right now, I didn't love 5 teams getting in, but the format they came up with, I think it is great, and I'm looking very much forward to Dodgers versus Giants. 107 wins against 106 wins. Unprecedented in baseball. This might be the best postseason series in baseball history. The fact that it's happening in a division series is bizarre, but that is the way it works, and I'm very much looking forward to that. Let's finish with the cooler. A couple of you guys asked me some music questions the other day, and so instead of just talking sports, and more sports, let's talk about music for a little bit. Paul wants to know, how many of the whole study shows are you attending next month? I think it'll just be one. And, I know some people, when there's like a long concert series, when a band is playing more than one show, they want to go to multiple shows. They want to see the different sets. They want to see the different nights. I've never done that. I've never gone to more than one show of an extended run. That just, you see a band once, you feel the energy, and maybe it'd be kind of fun to compare and see different songs, see different things. But once is enough for me. As much as I love the whole study, as much as I love other bands, I've never had the urge to want to go multiple nights to see a band. And if you're different, that's fine. I get why you would want to do that. I get why you'd want to go to multiple shows and see all of that you can see, especially now, because I miss going to shows so much. We haven't, it's with the pandemic, we haven't done that nearly as much. Haven't been able to see live music, which was such a big part of my life for a long time. But I still would only want to see the one. I think that's enough for me, and that's that. The other question comes from Rough Cat. What's the percent chance Black Eyed Peas need you to jump in and sing My Humps at Jingle Ball? I don't know. I'm ready. I've done that at karaoke multiple times. I do both. I do both sides of it. I do the male and the female voices. It's fine. I'm pretty good at it. And so if they need me to, I'm a known Black Eyed Peas apologist. I thought their halftime show, which many people didn't like, I really enjoyed it. So if they need me, I'm just saying, if they need me, I am ready. I'm happy to do that, and that would be just fine with me. But if they don't, then that's maybe their loss and everybody else's loss as well. That will do it for today. Thanks everybody for listening to the show today. I will be joined on Friday by Mark Craig for the usual NFL Picks segment, and Mike Hastings, men's hockey coach at Minnesota State Mankato. Huge series between that team and St. Cloud State coming up this weekend, number 1 against number 2 in the country. So looking forward to chatting with Mike Hastings, the head coach. Thank you so much for joining me here today. We'll get you again tomorrow.